Today marks the first day of the offseason for the Arizona Diamondbacks. What happened and what happens next for the D-backs?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, the show where we talk nothing but the Diamondbacks every single week. Thank you so much for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I am your host, Dana Biggs. This episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Go to 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. Today, we are going to be talking about, well, the elephant in the room here. The Diamondbacks got eliminated from the postseason in the very last series of the season, once again, as they did last year. However, last year it was even more heartbreaking when it was actually after our regular season had finished. It was, if you remember, we finished game 162, and then the next day was when we found out we were eliminated. So heartbreak, but they kind of ripped the Band-Aid off a little early. They didn't make us suffer through the whole series. They ripped the Band-Aid off in the first game. So kind of a bummer, but we're going to talk about all of that. We're going to look at the playoffs and what they have going for them. I'm also going to kind of just give my theories and my projections and who I'm rooting for. So if you're looking for somebody to root for in the playoffs, there are quite a few reasons to watch the playoffs still. So I still encourage that. We are going to recap the 2025 season for the Diamondbacks and go through some of the numbers, some of the things that we have to be excited about and hopefully get us excited about for next year. But before we do that, let's go ahead and talk about that San Diego series. So once again, as I said, we got eliminated after game one. So games 2 and 3, if you were watching, you could tell they weren't really trying to win much. Marte didn't start in game 2. They were pulling their players pretty early, which is, I think, the smart thing to do. I would have liked if they had gone and won at least one of those games to make it an even 81-81, a 500 season, as we were quite a few games above 500. And it was a shame to dip back below that by the end of the year. However, I think it was still the smart thing to do to say, you know what, let's save up for next season and let's get going. Zach Gallen pitched and did a fairly good job until the 4th inning. He gave up 3 singles in a row and then a walk, followed by a grand slam by Fernando Tatis. But before that, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Ketel Marte started things off with a leadoff home run, and of all people, McCarthy got a solo home run as well. Launched massive home run from Jake McCarthy. So that was cool to see. But we saw a lot of kind of odd and not very good. It was just straight up bad base running in this series. Surprisingly, from Geraldo Perdomo, he hit a huge double and tried to stretch it into a triple, but wasn't even close. And that really, I think, hurt the chances that we had, because he could have scored pretty easily after that from the hits that we got after that. So that would have at least kept the game pretty close and given us a shot. Which that was funny. If you weren't watching, Bob Brenly was talking about Jake McCarthy, and he's like, you know what? I would just love to see Jake McCarthy get going. And then that very next pitch, monster home run. And so in the next at bat, Perdomo comes up, and Steve Berthiaume, the play-by-play, is saying to Bob Brenly, you know what? You kind of called that. Why don't you just say the same thing about Perdomo? He's like, well, Perdomo's not doing bad. I don't know. Well, sure. Yeah, I'd like to see more from Perdomo. And then instantly, bang, a monster shot. Barely missed a home run. They were laughing about that, and they would have kept laughing about it had Perdomo not gotten thrown out at third. But, whatever. So that was kind of funny. So the mood was still pretty good throughout the series, at least as far as the color commentators were. The dream, by the way, for this channel is to have Steve Berthiaume and or Bob Brenly on this show at some point during the off season. That's what I'm trying for. I don't know if I'm supposed to say that on the podcast, but if you guys know how to get a hold of them, let me know. Or if you guys, because I know Steve Berthiaume and Bob Brenly are listening to this, Call me up, Steve and Bob. Anyway, like as I said, Gallen ended up giving up 5 runs in the 4th inning, which really kind of ended the shot there. But the Diamondbacks kept trying. The very next inning, Vargas hits an amazing double, runs in, safe, easy. But as he this is another base running thing. This was the point where I was like, okay, this is it. We're done. Which is fine. But Vargas slides in to second, easily beats the tag, but then somehow when he stood up, he like bounced off the bag for just half a second. And the shortstop cleverly kept the mitt on Vargas, and that got him out. And then right after that, Perdomo got a double. Like that would have scored a run right there. Like all he had to do was not bounce off the bag, and we would have scored another run, kind of getting that momentum back. But whatever. Speaking of Perdomo and Marte, they both had an error in the 5th, which didn't directly lead to a run, but indirectly probably allowed the Padres to get another run. We almost came back in I think it was the 8th inning. I didn't write it in my notes, but we almost came back. There was a massive Padres pitching collapse, which loaded the bases, and then they walked in 2 runs. And then they almost walked in another, except Barossa, understandably, they're throwing 100 plus miles per hour at him. It was a full count, and he swung at a very inside pitch to foul it, and then another one that was up high. Both of them were out of the zone. He's swinging defensively. I don't blame Barossa for getting out on that, but he could have taken that pitch and everything. But also, bases loaded, 2 outs. You're down by 2 runs. We made up 2 of those runs, so we were close. Couldn't get the job done. The Padres ended up scoring 1 more in the 8th, and we lost the game 7-4, officially being eliminated. That being said, I don't feel great about this, but the Reds did end up winning their series anyway. They won the very next game. So even if we had won this game, and even had we swept the Padres, we still would have been eliminated. That's just part of being in the position that we were in, hoping for other teams to lose. The Mets did. The Mets are out, which is kind of fun. I'm glad that the Mets didn't make it. Last year, they made it in our place. This year, the Reds made it in the Mets' place. So at least the Mets get a little bit of their own medicine in that sense. So anyway, and then game 2, these other games, I'm not going to go crazy on them. We're just going to kind of summarize them. San Diego pounced on Erod. Unfortunately, they were able to get a lot on him very early. Vargas had another bad base running stint where he tried to stretch a single into a double, which was followed immediately by a McCarthy triple. So that would have scored. Perdomo did get a home run. It's good for him. That added to his RBI count, which in game 3, which by the way, we lost game 2, 5-1. Don't worry about it. In game 3, Perdomo managed to get in his last at bat 2 RBIs, which gave him 100 RBIs on the season, which is a very big number. He's the first Diamondback shortstop to do that. He beat out, he beat out Nick Ahmed, who had the record up to that point, and he had 82 in 2019. So big numbers there. I did check. I think he would rank in 11th or 12th of the all-time Diamondbacks record for RBIs. That list gets high. Well, you factor in Luis Gonzalez, Paul Goldschmidt, and Matt Williams. I think the top is 142 with Gonzalez and Williams sharing that. But that's still, 100 RBIs is a ton, especially for a position like shortstop that you're mainly getting a shortstop for their defensive ability. And for the most part, vast majority of the time, Perdomo is fantastic defensively. And then also, we're going to talk about him more actually in a little bit. I don't know why I'm getting ahead of myself, but I was just going to say his team captain ability, his captaining ability is incredible. Marte also hit a leadoff home run. Fott had a really tough game. He gave up 5 hits in a row without recording an out to start the game. He ended up giving up 5 runs in the first, and we ended up losing the game 12-4. Again, these weren't games we were really trying to win. We were just Yeah, I think the energy was kind of sucked out of the Diamondbacks after game one. Perdomo did make it clear that he was in it to play. He wanted to play in all three of these games, and he did. So I think that is a very good sign that he is still ready to go, and I'm excited to see his mentality come 2026. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and do a quick look at the playoffs, but first, we're going to take a little break, so don't go anywhere. I'm going to tell you who you should be rooting for in the postseason. So stay right there. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus vitamin B vitamins, and nutrients with zero sugar and zero crashes. What I love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You take it anywhere and get the boost when you need it. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-hour energy shots. Get your favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at 5hourenergy.com or on Amazon today. This episode is also brought to you by Zippix Toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix has you covered with their nicotine and caffeine-infused toothpicks. For nicotine users, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix can be a helpful tool as you work to reduce your dependency on vaping. Available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer. Go to zippixtoothpicks.com, use code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. Must be 21 or older to order. Warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That's zippixtoothpicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. Zip it more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks. Okay, let's look at the playoffs. We unfortunately didn't make it. That wasn't something that I think even like 2 weeks ago I was expecting. And the Diamondbacks, I know a lot of you have this feeling, and Eric, who was on the last episode of the podcast, I think summed this feeling up really well. Is with all Arizona sports fans, they're kind of led on by the team to think, oh, maybe there's a chance, maybe we're going to make it, and then they're let down at the last minute. I share that feeling, but not. I also have the outlook that the at least for the Diamondbacks, I can't say the same for every Arizona sports team, but for the Diamondbacks, they are building towards something and have been for the last few years, and have this ability to go on runs late in the season. And the last 3 years did that every single time. Only one of those 3 years they actually made it, but even those three, none of those 3 years, including 2023, I don't think they were supposed to make the playoffs any of those years. The fact that they got this close 3 times in a row says a lot. And then that they made it one of those years too, and went on a big run. But I think that the Diamondbacks and the Diamondback fan base, what they need to recognize is that the Diamondbacks are perpetually an underdog team. Like, we will always just be that team that people don't really expect much from. And we love our time in the limelight. Whenever on national TV they mention the Diamondbacks, oh, we get excited, and whenever they're talking about them. But we need to remember that not to taper our expectations, because I don't want anybody to do that, but to understand and to be happy whenever we get a run like we had. I don't know exactly. This isn't in my notes. I didn't plan on talking about any of this, so hopefully this makes some sort of sense. But I just want to put out there clearly that I'm very proud of the Diamondbacks. I'm proud of what they were able to do. I'm proud of Torey Lovello. I'm proud of all the players. I'm proud of Mike Hazen. A lot of you guys may disagree with that. I know a lot of you do. But I am really happy with the direction that the Diamondbacks are moving in. And if we can use the best of what we got from the end of this year and then add to it, I think next year is going to be a far better season, and we're not going to be racing to the last game or series to make the playoffs. That's my kind of prediction. So anyway, let's go and look at the playoffs real quick. So the Brewers have home field advantage. They're the number 1 seed, and the Phillies as well. Those two teams got to bye, so they're gonna wait the first round. The Dodgers are gonna host the Reds, and the Cubs will host the Padres. So that's the first round: Dodgers, Reds, Cubs, Padres. Now, if you want to know who I'm rooting for the Reds and the Cubs. Obviously, I don't want the Dodgers or the Padres to make it even a little bit far in this postseason race. So go Reds, go Cubs. And then after that, the Phillies would play the Reds and the Brewers would play the Cubs. I'm rooting for the Brewers and the Reds. I don't really want the Phillies. I don't like the Phillies that much. I like everybody on the team. And that's the thing too. I love most of the players on the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman, Ohtani, Mookie Betts, fantastic people. Dave Roberts, incredible baseball players and people. I just hate the Dodgers. And that's kind of how I am with the Phillies too. So I hope that the National League Championship Series is between the Brewers and the Reds, and I hope the Brewers are the ones to make it. So that's my list. I'll post a thing on Instagram and Twitter. I'm still figuring out. I think I might be figuring out the graphics, but I wasn't comfortable enough with them today, so I didn't try today. But I will try and get those going soon. But I'll post those on Instagram. My brackets, the Locked On Diamondbacks brackets. In the American League, the Blue Jays have home field advantage, and the Mariners also have a bye. So I love the Blue Jays and I love the Mariners, especially after they got Naylor and Suarez. That definitely was really nice. So I like the Blue Jays and the Mariners. If either of them made it and won the World Series, I would be very excited. The Yankees are going to host the Red Sox, and the Guardians are going to host the Tigers. I think the Guardians, the whole idea of them upsetting the Tigers and coming back from so far back to win the division is so great. So I'm hoping for a Guardians win over the Tigers. And then I don't like the Red Sox or the Yankees that much. I like the Red Sox more than the Yankees, though. So I'm going to say I hope the Red Sox win. And then it would be the let me see. I wrote that down. I couldn't remember who was who. Then I would want to see. So then the Guardians and the Red Sox would play. No, I don't have that right down at all. Okay, we'll just say the Yankees and the Red Sox. So then it's the Red Sox and the Guardians, the Blue Jays and the Mariners. I don't have a huge soft spot for the Guardians. I like them fine, but they're not a favorite team. And the Red Sox, as I said, not a huge fan. So I hope it's the Blue Jays and the Mariners in the American League Championship Series. And I hope that it is the Mariners that make it to the World Series. So my ideal World Series is a Brewers-Mariners World Series, which I think is what most people want. I've seen that most people are kind of hoping for that. They're afraid of a Yankees-Dodgers World Series again. I am too. I would be very upset to see that. But the Dodgers have been struggling as of late. The Yankees are good, but they're not playing the best baseball either. Like their record is fine. But I would love to see both of those teams knocked out in the first round. That would be wonderful. Anyway, that is kind of what we're looking at. So hopefully, go Brewers, go Mariners. Between the two, I'd probably root for the Mariners because I'd love to see Suarez and Naylor get a ring. That would be awesome. I would love that for them. And so that's probably Brewers versus Mariners in the World Series, and hopefully the Mariners take the victory in Seattle. That would be incredible. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and talk about the whole of the 2025 season and for the Diamondbacks after this break. So don't go anywhere. Stay right there. We will be right back. You've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there and it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand trusted by over 1.5 million people. And now Nutrafol is the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements. And you can feel good about it knowing Nutrafol is NSF certified and backed by peer-reviewed studies. See thick, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. So this season was quite the roller coaster of a season, wasn't it? This is not going to be an extensive look at the season because we have a whole off season together with me and you. That we have a lot of things to talk about, and there are a lot of things to talk about. I last week we had the episode where we had somebody ask about Corbin Carroll and how he compares to past Diamondback players, and that sent me down a whole rabbit hole. And I was like, this would be such a fun episode to look at. It'd be even funner if there were graphics on the screen to help me explain it. So we'll get that figured out, but then we'll be able to like do fun episodes like that and talk about how this team compared to last year's. We could talk about uh, who I think would be good acquisitions to get in the off season, what all of what the status is on all the contracts of all of our players, who I think our roster is going to comprise of, and the status of injuries and what our minor league system looks like, and we can look at a lot of stuff. So what I want you guys to do is if you can comment on this video or any video, because I just see all of them in one big thing. Comment what topics you would like to see covered on this show going forward during the off season, because we're going to have this is going to be a lot of that. We are going to have news and there'll be things that come up and we'll bring it up and everything. But I want to see what you guys think about that. Do you guys want to see an episode where we break down Torey Lovello's career or his effectiveness as a manager? Do you want to see how Chase Field is going to look after it's renovated? Because if you guys didn't know, Chase Field has just got a massive renovation bill passed from Arizona, and that's going to be huge. Essentially guarantees the Diamondbacks are staying in Arizona for the next 30 years. So do you want us to talk about that? Let me know in the comments. And obviously, if I pick your subject, you're getting one heck of a shout out. So that's cool, right? We like shout outs. I imagine I like shout outs. I like being shouted out on podcasts. It's fun. Don't know if that's the same with you guys, but anyway, I'm rambling a little bit. You're probably going to get a little bit more Danon rambling and personality in the off season because I'm talking more about my thoughts and feelings, less about like how the game went yesterday. So anyway, just be prepared for that. Also, I wanted to say I expect a lot less people to be watching and listening during the off season because it's the off season and the season didn't end the way we wanted it to. So if you're here, you're still here, you're still listening, then I mean, I already said to leave a comment, but if you've left a comment, you're kind of just showing you're one of the real ones. not that other people aren't, but it means a lot to know that there are fans out there who can get through the loss and get through the end of a season and still show up and support their team. So that's huge. So thank you so much. All right, let's look at some of the stats of the team. Some of these surprised me. First of all, I'm not really going to talk about the Diamondbacks' pitching stats because that did rank among the worst. The Diamondbacks pitching is the reason we didn't make the playoffs. If there was, that's half of the game. So yeah, I guess that's not a big thing to say, but our offense really did show up this year. It did very good. Let's start at walks. The team had 541 walks. That ranks 9th in MLB. Remember, there are 162 games. So you're looking at 4 walks a game. I'm just doing rough math in my head. 541 walks. The Diamondbacks had a team batting average of 251, which ranks 8th. So a quarter of the time, the Diamondbacks were getting a base hit. That's a pretty good number for the team as a whole. Very impressive. They had 213 home runs, 8th in the league as well. So 8 out of 30 teams, they had one of the higher numbers of home runs. A lot of that is probably due to players like Suarez and Naylor, but then you also have Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Geraldo Perdomo. So, and we'll talk about them more in a little bit as well. Speaking of Perdomo, the next one is our on-base percentage was 324, which is 7th in the league. So nearly a third of the time, the Diamondbacks got on base, which is like, if you just think about how many at-bats there are in how many games, that is crazy to think. The Diamondbacks had 787 runs scored, which is 5th in the MLB. They would score an average of 4.91 runs per game, nearly 5 runs a game. The Diamondbacks would put a 5 up on their runs scored. That is 4th in the league. I don't know why there's a difference there, number of runs versus number of runs per game, since everybody plays the same amount of games. I'm not sure where the discrepancy is there, but I will take the 4th place ranking. And this one shouldn't be too big of a surprise, but I'll throw it out there anyway. The Diamondbacks ranked number 1 in triples, 38 triples in the season of 2025. Very, very, like, just absolutely crazy. And a lot of those obviously probably coming from Corbin Carroll, which, speaking of Corbin Carroll, let's go ahead and talk about some of the players. First of all, we had 3 All-Stars in the All-Star game this year: Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, and Eugenio Suarez. At the time, we weren't making the postseason. There was no chance. We were going to be a 4th place team. The only reason we're not 5th place is because we're in the same division as the Rockies. Nobody's thinking much of us. Usually in those kinds of seasons, we have our one, gimme All-Star. And this year we had 0 gimme All-Stars. All of them deserve to be there. Honestly, I think more deserve to be there, but that was still not something to scoff at. Ketel Marte had 28 home runs, and a stat I kind of dove into pretty deep preparing for this was he had 144 weighted runs created plus, WRC plus, which is essentially 100 is the baseline, is the average number of runs that players create. It's more of a percentile thing. It's not a number, I guess. That's what the weighted part is. So 100 is average. If you're under 100, if you're like 80, 70, 60 or whatever, then you're worse than average. And if you are above 100, then you are better than average. And Ketel Marte ranked 7th in the entire MLB with 144. So that is huge. And Ketel Marte absolutely deserves that spot. Somebody who was able to show up and do that. He has his slumps. He has his moments where he wasn't quite as good. There was a big part of the year where he was injured early on, which this accounts for that. So, but very impressive, I think, from Ketel Marte. Definitely deserved to be that all-star starter that he was. Corbin Carroll had 17 triples, which ranks him at the very top of the list in the MLB. That is a Diamondbacks record, by the way, and he led the National League in triples for the 3rd season in a row. So Corbin Carroll is the triples man. So when you're talking about triples, Corbin Carroll absolutely needs to be the person to talk about. He had 31 home runs and 32 stolen bases. So if you didn't already know, he made the much coveted 30-30 club, which I believe only 5 people made. I might be wrong there. I think I saw something about that, but not very many people make that club. He is the first Diamondback ever to make the 30-30 club. It's very impressive. And then his weighted runs created was 139, which puts him at 10th place in the whole league. So out of all the hitters in the MLB, he created the 10th most runs. He's responsible for the 10th most runs. And that's not just RBIs and home runs and stuff. That's he got on base this many times. He advanced runners this many times. It's like a whole algorithm thing. And maybe we'll dive into that at some point if you guys want to hear about how that's calculated. I don't know that I would actually, I know that I would want an episode about that. I don't think you guys would. So, but if you do, let me know. And then let's go and talk about Geraldo Perdomo. This guy is the man. So he had 20 home runs, 27 stolen bases. Really good numbers, to be honest. But in his last game yesterday, he got his 100th RBI, which is the most of any Diamondback shortstop. Beat Nick Ahmed's 2019 number of 82 and puts him up there for some of the most RBIs by a Diamondback in a single season. His on-base percentage was .390, which is 4th in the entire majors. And if you see who he's up there with, it's insane. He's up there with these massive power hitters like Ohtani and Soto. It's incredible. But yeah, that's basically 4 out of 10 times he was getting on base. And that's really how it felt when he would come up to bat. It was like he might get out, but honestly, it almost feels like it was more likely that he would get on base than he wouldn't. And then he actually tied with Corbin Carroll in weighted runs created with 139. So he and Corbin Carroll, 10th out of all Major League Baseball players, and weighted runs created plus. Also, another interesting thing, Perdomo played in all but 2 games this season, which is the 7th most, because I have a number for that. Basically, there were a bunch of players that played 161. There were a few that played 162. And there was one player who got 163 because it was Devers on the Giants. He got traded after he had played X amount of games, 1 game more than the Giants had. So he played 163 games. So good for Rafael Devers. Also, but we're not talking about him. We're talking about Perdomo. Also, Perdomo is going to get MVP votes. Had they made the playoffs, he probably would have gotten a lot more, but he 100%. I don't think he's going to get any first place votes. Nor I don't know. I think he should get a few. I don't think he should win it because there are other people in the National League who probably deserve it. But Perdomo absolutely 1000% deserves to get votes and to be in the top 5. 100%. He had a breakout year this year, and I hope that just continues to go up. Anyway, we have a ton of things that we could talk about the Diamondbacks. I'm such a nerd when it comes to the Diamondbacks and baseball and numbers and contracts and moves and managers and all these kinds of things. So you guys are going to get a lot of that. However, I wanted to point out, now that we've entered the postseason, you will only be seeing us 3 times a week instead of 5 times a week. We'll be posting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday of every single week. But you can expect some really exciting and exclusive looks at the Diamondbacks organization and the upcoming 2026 season. We're going to be doing a lot behind the scenes to ensure that this is a very exclusive and fun and informational podcast that will get you excited about the upcoming season and make the next season a really fun time. So thank you so much for sticking around and being here. You guys are absolutely incredible. Be sure to follow us over on X and Instagram at Locked On Diamondbacks. We're on YouTube as well as every other place you get your podcasts. If you want to see more of me, you can go find more of my YouTube channels and projects at slackshack.tv, a website, slackshack.tv. Thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. For your second listen, find the all-night Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night until a World Series champion is crowned. Hopefully the Mariners, but whatever. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much for being here, and we will see you on Wednesday.